Good afternoon, everyone. I warmly welcome you to this session from efficiency to impact, business strategies to reduce food loss and food waste. Business play a pivotal role in changing the equation. Today's session will explore how business can drive efficiency and innovation, how they can build resilient and circular food system. To set the context for this discussion, it's my pleasure to invite Chirag Bansal, Senior Program Associate, Food Land and Water, WRI India. Over to you, Chirag.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. The upcoming panel discussion focuses on role of food-based businesses in reducing food loss. Before we hear from our panelists, I would like to briefly set the context onto why businesses are central to this agenda, the value that reducing food loss creates, and how these ideas can be translated into action. So I'm sure you must have visited these numbers today. There have been different speakers who have mentioned these numbers. The inference that I want to make through these numbers, through these figures, highlight that reducing food loss and waste is not just an environment priority. It is also an economic and development challenge that requires collective action. To understand where solutions lie, it's important to take a look at where food loss and waste actually occur across the food supply chain. While different stakeholders influence different parts of the system, food businesses sit at the center of the supply chain. They connect upstream actors like farmers and suppliers with downstream markets and consumers. This means that the decisions made by businesses, whether across sourcing, procurement, storage, quality standards, or logistics, can influence where food loss occurs and, more importantly, where it can be prevented. That makes food businesses uniquely positioned to drive food loss reduction at scale, which is why engaging food businesses is essential if we want to achieve meaningful reduction in food loss. The opportunity becomes even more significant in India, where the food processing and retail sectors are expanding rapidly. Today, 93% of India's food retail is still informal, but the formal retail sector is expanding rapidly alongside growing food processing, e-commerce, and quick commerce. At the same time, India is home to over 2.3 million food enterprises and more than 42,000 registered food processing units, highlighting the scale of businesses that can influence how food moves across the supply chain. As India's food businesses continue to grow, there is unique opportunity to integrate food loss reduction into sourcing, processing, and retail systems, ensuring that efficiency and sustainability grow alongside the sector. For food businesses, reducing food loss is both a strategic business opportunity and a pathway to creating shared value. Businesses can improve operational efficiency, reduce costs, and recover value from food that would otherwise be lost. At the same time, they can build more resilient supply chains by strengthening relationships with farmers and suppliers, while also making measurable progress towards their sustainability and climate commitments. Beyond these operational benefits, reducing food loss also strengthens brand credibility and demonstrates leadership in sustainable food systems. And this isn't just a theoretical business case. A global analysis across more than 1,200 business sites found a median return of $14 for every $1 invested in reducing food loss and waste. Alongside it also reduces business risks and strong brand value. Strongest brand value. And if we talk about the global initiatives for reducing food loss and food waste, WRI India is mobilizing private sector action through supporting food businesses to measure food loss, identify hotspots, and implement practical actions. The aim of these initiatives is to expand farm gate and supplier programs that can improve inbound quality and yields, reduce rejections, stabilize service levels during price and climate volatility, and convert waste into higher utilization or secondary value streams. To briefly share how WRI India engages with food businesses to reduce food loss, our approach begins with measuring food loss by conducting baseline assessments across agricultural value chains. Depending on the context, we use approaches such as farmer surveys, value chain mapping, and direct field measurements to understand where and why losses occur. We then generate evidence by identifying food loss hotspots and assessing the broader environmental, economic, and livelihood impacts of these losses. Finally, we work with businesses to translate these insights into practical actions, helping them integrate food loss reduction into their operations and decision-making. This approach is already being implemented through our collaborations with food businesses such as ITC Limited and Sahyadri Farms. ITC has been a strong partner in advancing this particular initiative with a lot of different stages that we have covered in different value chains. Thank you.
Thank you, Chirag. We are now moving to panel discussion, where we will hear perspectives from leaders across industry and policy. I now invite our moderator for the session, Shweta Lamba, Senior Program Manager, Food, Land and Water, WRI India. I invite our panelist, Sachin Sharma. Sachin is the Vice President and Head Agri and Dairy Operation at ITC Agri Business, leading a agri commodities and dairy supply chain, digital agri initiative, farmer collectives, and sustainability programs. Next panelist is Srimoy Bhattacharya. She's joining us online. Srimoy is the lead sustainability at Marico Limited, where she drives enterprise-wide ESG integration, advancing circular economy, climate resilience, commodity impact, and responsible value chain practices. Now moving on to the other panelist, Deeptin Chatterjee. Deeptin is the Director, Corporate Affairs, South Asia at Tetra Pak India Private Limited, where he leads public policy and sustainability initiative across the region. Moving on to our fourth panelist, Suniti Tuteja. Suniti is Scientist F, Senior Director and Head of Food and Agriculture Department at BIS, leading the development of national standards across food and agriculture sector. Over to you, Shweta.
Thank you. Thank you again for joining and joining this particular session to hear more about how businesses are working on reducing food loss and food waste. So in this session, we are aiming to discuss on what is the role of food businesses and what can they do to reduce food loss and food waste. Generally, when we talk about food loss and food waste, we do imagine farmers, we do imagine consumers. We generally forget the one important link between the both, which is, of course, businesses. And I think they're a critical role they play. So today we'll hear more about how businesses can reduce food loss and waste in our discussion. So starting with you, Sachin. So ITC has been a great partner. We have done some really good work and we hope to do more. In reducing, first we are assessing post-harvest losses in upstream farmers, but we are also hoping to do more action-oriented work to reduce them as well. So in your view, what proportion of farmers in India are currently linked to the organized sector, which is the organized retail, food retail sector, such as retailers, processors, large buyers, and what kind of farmers are most represented in this supply chain? For instance, small farmers, marginal farmers, who are these farmers who are actually, supplying to these businesses?
Thank you, Shweta. So first of all, my thanks to the organizers, WRI, for inviting us. And yes, we are partners with the WRI on our global program, which is 10-20K-30, wherein we are working with more than 20,000 farmers among 10 global companies, where the idea is to reduce food loss by 50% by 2030. And we're really excited to be part of that program globally. So to start with, I think food loss and waste is a critical and very important aspect. And as ITC, we have a specific policy because we are integrated FMCG company, right from farmers up to the consumer. But for this discussion, I would cover things which are more related to on-farm and near-farm. That's where I represent within agribusiness domain. While as ITC, we work a lot to the further part of the value chain, which is at manufacturing, also at sales, marketing, and distribution across various formats of food, FMCG, what we work with. So, as you asked, what kind of farmers are connected for the organized food sector? So, I would say, as we heard in the previous panels also, that India is a fragmented agriculture market, and one is that we have different studies say different numbers, but maybe 14 to 18 crores farmers in India, small and marginal, and the markets are also fragmented. So historically, the farmers, and still majority of them are connected with the traditional APMC markets. And let me tell you, these markets and the market players play a critical role in the entire value chain. So sometime while we think that it's like intermediaries, but they have critical role to play in a fragmented market, wherein in terms of aggregation, organization, grading, sorting, and it's a market for everything. So that has been the traditional market. But over the years, various value chain companies like ITC have started building farmer network. And as we speak, I think a lot of farmers have directly or through the producer organizations started connecting with the organized food chain. While giving a number will be difficult, but I would say that, basis nature of the value chain, the engagement levels are of different order. So for example, something like value chain like milk, roughly 40 to 50% is going to organized players as we speak out of the surplus. And for a say value chain which is export oriented, wherein food safety is a critical element, that's also where the engagements are of higher order. For example, say food safe spices value chain, or any other export oriented crops, maybe like basmati rice which is going to Europe, wherein you need to work. Third segment is where the food companies are also working with farmers in terms of creating a back-end network. Like so we have eChopal, which has where almost 4 million farmers have been connected with us and for various information and transaction. And now we have pivoted these farmers to ITC Mars and slowly converting all of them into farmer producer organizations, working already almost with 2,600 FPOs as we speak, and 2.6 million farmers are on our digital platform. So in such, and likewise there are startups who are working with farmers. So slowly the farmers who are into the bulk commodities or bulk grains are also getting connected with the food companies. So it's a progressive transformation which is taking place, and it is happening direct engagement and also largely through say FPOs or any other farmer groups.
Thank you. No, this is very helpful to understand the landscape of farmers on who are providing to these businesses. The next question is to Srimoyi, who's online. I hope you can hear us, Srimoyi. Okay, so moving on to you. As per your experience in your work, what is the share of the organized segment on the supplier side of India's food sector, including the informal retailers, processors and service providers, since you closely work with an organized sector in your supply chain as well? Over to you. We can't hear you, Srimoyi.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Srimay Bhattacharya from Marico. I would like to start with apologies for not being able to join you in person and missing out on some of the excellent conversations that may have been happening since morning.
There's a lag, Srimoyi. Would you want to try switching off your camera? And there's some lag on your end. Or maybe R.
Couldn't travel because of was thank WRI for inviting me.
There's a little lag, Srimoyi. Would you want to try switching off your camera and speaking? if that helps. Okay, can you still hear us? Okay, maybe there's some technical issues. Maybe we'll move on and we'll get back to her later. So moving on, Deepten, we had some lovely conversations last time as well. Thanks for joining us again here at Reset 2026. So from Tetra Pak's experience on working with large food and beverages company, how are businesses using processing and packaging solutions to improve operational efficiency, product quality, and of course reducing post-harvest losses?
Thanks, Shweta. I think good afternoon. First of all, it's lovely being here. And to start with, not many people know, but Tetra Pak is beyond just a packaging company. So we are into packaging as well as food processing equipment, something which is probably a lesser known fact. And so in our interaction or our work which do with the leading F&B players of India, a lot of the trends that we observe in the country that then leads us to actually reconsider our, let's say, our way of working, or maybe reconsidering some of the innovations that we work on, and then try to probably cater and create more of a tailor-made solution for the customers. Okay. When I say our customers, we are talking of all the leading brands, which are the F&B brands in India. And to answer your question, Shweta, what we have been observing in the last few years is, I think brands are now far more interested in actually investing in innovation, but at the same time, not at the cost of, let's say, sustainability. So that actually is now starting to emerge more and more prominently in our conversation. So, we want to be faster, we want to cater to our customer requirements smarter, use AI, digital tools, but not at the cost of, let's say, the energy consumption, water consumption, and so on and so forth. And one of the examples that I can take in this case is, I think even we as Tetra Pak had to kind of go back and start looking at the way juice is, for example, processed. And traditionally what we have seen is that, the ingredients of juice making process, they are actually blended with water and then pasteurized. And what we observed is that during this process, there is a lot of wastage and additional energy which is consumed, versus now where we realize that if you take just the concentrate and then you pasteurize it, A, the energy consumption is far lower, and B, the amount of water that is required post-production for cleaning the equipment is almost 50% less. Okay, so that has led us to now create a kind of a separate line of aseptic, parallel processing equipment, which probably a couple of years back we did not have. Okay, so that is innovation. The second one is more around the data. I think most of the advanced equipment or processing equipment or even packaging equipment that we sell to our customers or brands, we observe that there are tons of data that is being generated. How do you really comprehend something from there and think about, can we do something from this data and then make it one of our decisions to make our organization more sustainable? And one of the operating systems that we developed last year, our Tetra Pak Factory OS, that combines internal as well as external data, which is a lot of the data which resides within equipments across units. All of those are mapped. And once you start studying those data along with AI generated and digital tools, we realize that it is possible to predict with a reasonable amount of accuracy how much downtime an equipment might have. Where is a wastage which is actually occurring in the entire processing process, right? In the entire food manufacturing process. And because of the way that we were able to identify that, now when we sell these solutions and we are sitting with our customers, we are able to identify at the precise moment when that wastage or loss is happening, and we are able to address that, right? The last example, again, very quick example, I think is kind of speed to market, something which is prominent for every customer, right? But like I said, perhaps 10 years back, that would have been the first priority. Now it is about speed as well as with sustainability. So one of the fastest, in fact, the fastest packaging machine that we have, in a way, the gold standard for packaging in terms of cartons is the E3 speed hyper machine. It has a speed of 40,000 cartons per hour. That's the fastest that one can get in the market. But what we did was we kind of started making some tweaks and changes in the way the equipment operates. And we are now able to use, for example, completely eliminate the use of hydrogen peroxide for cleaning up the equipment. And so we use completely electron or E-beam technology to actually clean up or sanitize the equipment. The water consumption and the energy consumption of this equipment is also almost substantially 50 to 60% lower than other equipment. So in a way, it's speed to market still, but now the focus is more around how can we make it a little more sustainable for the customer.
Thank you. No, it's great to hear that we are innovating more, and I'm sure going forward we'll become more sustainable oriented as well. And I'm sure Tetra Pak is actually thinking about sustainability right now as well. Moving on to a very important stakeholder. So, Suniti, as India's food sector becomes more organized, since we are seeing more unorganized sector becoming organized, and so how is the standards and regulatory landscape evolving with the change in unorganized to organized, and what are the key priorities at this stage for you? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shweta. And good afternoon, everybody. And I think, first of all, would like to thank WRI for inviting BIS to this. I think it's a wonderful, the theme, will reset itself. I think it makes a lot of. Now, in terms of how standards or regulations are changing is, I think traditionally it has been that, the focus of the food standards or food regulations or agriculture-based has always been more on, ensuring the quality or the safety of the food, that is available for human consumption. So maybe because I think the question should be, I think is more relating to what we are doing in terms of food loss and food waste. So traditionally, even in BIS, as the standards body, national standards body, the focus has always been, on maybe the newer techniques, or the newer innovations that are happening either in the food packaging sector or food technology, which is going to guarantee the safety and quality. So food loss or food waste has not been, you could say, an integral part of our regulatory landscape, and it is not only nationally, but even internationally. And now internationally, as I think WRI is also associated with BIS now, in some of our work, that we are doing in food loss and food waste, but internationally, since for the benefit of everybody, because many of you may not be knowing that BIS also represents India at the ISO. So what we do in India, BIS makes ISO, the Indian standards. Similarly, at the ISO, we have the international standards. So maybe around, you could say 2021, ISO established a subcommittee or a technical committee under the food committee to look at this food loss and food waste. Even at that time in the ISO, for a whole year or so, there was discussion whether you should form a new technical committee or whether it should be under the main technical committee which is looking after food. Because, as I said, we didn't have the experts, or you could say, traditionally it was only about food safety, quality, testing, codes, guidelines, terminologies, etc., specifications, technology, but not so much talking on, for food safety, for food loss and waste. So, of course, that has now been one of the priority areas under the main food products committee at the ISO, and they formed a separate subcommittee at the ISO. So, just by looking at it, that there is a technical committee at ISO, which is ISO TC 34, a very old committee, maybe started in the year 1950s, and then it has around 19 subcommittees till 2021. And it formed the SC20, which is the food loss and the food waste subcommittee in 2021. So you can imagine that even at the international level, the standardization started happening, say, around 4 to 5 years back. And of course, that is also now one of the priorities. Now, in terms of what the regulations are taking up, of course, I think since many of you would be knowing, FSSAI, which is the food regulator, they have regulations on the food recovery and food surplus management, etc. But I think something which is more related to food loss and food waste is also educating the consumer, So once you educate the consumer, there the regulations, the labeling, becomes very important. So the food label is what is the food, how the food talks to the consumer. So having a more, clear labeling regulations will definitely help, to aid the consumer in terms of how the food has to be stored, how it has to be prepared, how it has to be frozen. So to reduce the waste at the end of the consumer. But in terms of what BIS is now doing is that we are actively participating in the development of standards at the international level. And I think maybe during the course, because I see that my time's up, maybe I'll briefly tell you, on these standards which are being developed at the ISO and will soon also be identically adopted as Indian standards. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. No, we'll be keen to know more about the ISO standard that's on food loss and food waste. I'll go back to Shrimoy, who's online. Hope you can hear us, Shrimoy. So I'll go back to you on what have been your key learnings from engaging with unorganized upstream actors of the supply chain, particularly working with Marico, and what opportunities do you see with for businesses to strengthen these engagements?
Right. Am I audible this time?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Two reasons now for me to start the session by saying sorry. One, for not being there in person, and then because of the technical glitch. I deeply apologize and very happy to meet all of you and be part of this very critical session, I would say, that we are having at this point of time. Let me shift the lens a little bit. So from what I heard the eminent panelists talk about, if I can just shift the lens a bit and move towards, the impact of climate, that the impact of food loss that is happening on the climate fragility that India is currently facing at the moment. I'm sure many of you would have faced terrible weather conditions in Delhi or in whichever part of the country that you belong to. There are different other impacts of climate change that we are seeing almost on a daily basis at the moment. You would be very curious and interested to know is that food loss is creating a major impact, actually attributing to the situations that India has when it comes to climate fragility, right? And I guess one of the key outcomes from this session would be how we can really move the system from being climate fragile to climate agile. So let's see where we get there. See, as part of our engagement with the upstream value chain, with the agri value chain that is, what we've realized is almost 1 out of every 2 stakeholders in this value chain comes from an unorganized sector, right? So this economic fragmentation that we are talking about, it's not just an economic statistic, it's actually one of the largest structural drivers of food loss in the country. The kind of fragmentation that we really have in this entire sector. It's extremely unorganized. Less than 15% of the workforce that is there in this sector actually comes from an organized sectoral background, which also means that when you are trying to do any kind of capacity building or any kind of productivity gain related discussions with these smallholder farmers, it becomes very challenging to really deal with this particular sector. The result of all of this is we know that almost 70 to 80 million tons of food loss is happening in the country at the moment, which is costing us almost about 1.5 lakh crore annually. What it is also leading to is, if you see globally, 8 to 10% of the global GHG emissions is actually happening because of food loss. right? And India being one of the largest attributors of emitters of GHG emissions at the moment, given the size of our country and the population, food loss is one of the key drivers to where we are in terms of the risks that we are causing from an environmental and a climate standpoint. So I think one of the major areas that Marico has been working on, other than the developing traceability, accessing various kinds of digital systems, platforms to be able to develop that last mile traceability from where the agri-produce is really coming from. We are working very deeply at the moment on having a deforestation-free sourcing program where we can really look at some of our major produce in the likes of edible oils or copra. Marico is the largest buyer of one of the largest buyers of coconuts in the country. So what we are focusing on is to try and establish that last mile traceability up to at a location level using various satellite imagery. We are also working on capacitating these smallholder farmers, right? Many a times what happens is the expectation that we have from large organizations or brands is an assessment and enforcement of certain rules and regulations for value chain to be able to drive in sustainability measures within their ecosystems. But what we've really understood is there is a precedence to that assessment, that evaluation that you can do with these farmers. Before you even get to identification of hotspots, your opportunities where you can work on food loss, you have to work on capacitating them over term, right? So it has to be trust building that happens over years through aggregates, through collective business opportunities that you can raise for them. And only then will you be able to work on this fragmented sector that you're talking about, and that will ultimately lead to, having that climate agility that I started the conversation with. I hope that answers your question, Shweta.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Shrimoi. And actually, you've set the ground for our next question. So we totally agree that assessment is not just assessment, but it's also identifying where the hotspots are, where the losses needs to be reduced, where the opportunities lie. And taking the same approach, we have started our work with ITC, and I would want to ask Sachin the next question on what has been your learnings working on this assessing post-harvest losses that we have been doing with ITC, and what are some learnings that you can share with other businesses that, this is the opportunity that you can tap to, what is the benefit of working with upstream farmers to reduce post-harvest losses?
So I think, as I said earlier, food loss has been one of the core issue for us. And we have been engaging with the farmers directly through our e-Chopal from last 20 plus years. So, and now more closely working on, measuring some of these losses, etc. So there are a few learnings which we had, and when we designed the model to address these or inbuilt into our business model, these learnings were very handy. So first learning has been that we always, when we think of food loss, we think of a market or mandi or a wholesale market, and that's where the loss starts. But actually the loss starts in field. So in fact, the first loss happens in the standing crop itself. Even if you delay the harvesting, the loss starts. So one of the key learning which we had from quite some time has been that the food loss starts in the field. That is one. Second thing is, it's not only the quantity, it's also the quality. While the quantity loss are been measured and visible, the quality loss is something which is impacting farmer or value chain players, but you can only imagine it, but probably measuring it is difficult. But if you measure, then you realize that what kind of losses are going because of the quality. Imagine in tomatoes, good tomato and a rotten tomato. I mean, you may get some value out of that also, but there is a huge value loss. And when we have done measurement of those 7 value chains, we realized that in the perishable value chains, such losses, like for example, in say chilies, the loss of the quality because of the poor drying it's a big quality loss, and it reduces the value which farmer would get otherwise. So that's another critical learning. Third has been that not only that you need to have physical interventions to address these losses, like we saw interventions of organized market yards, maybe cold chain, but another critical intervention is educating farmer and the information. So if you are able to make farmer aware about the losses on farm and then educate him, even things like educating him on weather say events and what should be done in the weather event so that the loss can be minimized. Those actions can also actually save a lot of losses. So that's another learning I would say, which is there. And that's how when we've created, and that's where my fourth learning comes, is that, and it is in a way will touch in the next question as well, is that you cannot create solutions in isolation. So any food loss addressable solution for farmer has to be ingrained in farmer practice, and it should be also part of your business model. So how we have done, probably I will reserve that in the next question, but that's another learning that you cannot have a separate addressable of food loss. It has to be part of the business model, and it has to be meeting three criteria. One is impact for the farmer. Another is it should be easily implementable, any recommendation or whatever you want to do. And third, it should be also having positive impact on the environment. So if your solutions are not meeting one of the criteria, they will not be scalable. Like ease of implementation itself is a very important element. Like one example, collection of food waste. Everyone understands that every household is not an agri example, that food waste is there. But imagine collection is difficult. That's the reason when you think of large scale collections and like for example, there are technologies nowadays, there are bacteria or biologicals which can convert food waste into say very good manures, right? But imagine to collect those food waste at economical price so that your manure cost is also logical for an end user farmer is a challenge. So ease of the adoption is also a very important criteria which one should consider.
Actually, that's very critical for farmers because, and also I agree, food loss is a term, but it does not have to be looked at separately. Rather, it's integrated. And we have been working on reducing food loss from years, but not calling it out, I would say. So rather, it should be a part of the system or a separate intervention. So it's always better when it's more integrated in the existing systems. Now I'll pass on to Deeptain. So you mentioned there's growing innovation. When businesses invest in packaging or processing solution, how can they assess the overall impact, not only on shelf life and food loss reduction, but also on circularity, like you said, water saving and environmental footprint? And could you help us with some examples to understand how you have been doing that?
Sure. So I think going back to what I was mentioning about the kind of environment that we have right now in the F&B space, and kind of speaking on behalf of the industry, what we have is a pretty uncertain world. We have an unstable weather pattern, right? We have got a bit of, I would say, the consumption pattern has also kind of become very unpredictable. So for FMCG players to be able to predict these with accuracy and be able to A, produce more with less resources, and B, remain sustainable at this point, right? So these are the priorities that our customers are seeing, and we are working with them on this journey because this is an evolving journey, and there are various ways that even we are helping them or supporting them on this journey to kind of assess how can the impact or the footprint of the product that they bring out in the market, how can that be measured and how can that be reduced in a way, right? I can take maybe two examples, to kind of showcase what we have been doing. So one of the things, that we realized was in terms of our ambitions, our 2030 ambitions, which we kind of, decided a couple of years back, works with or in parallel with our customers to reduce their three areas. So energy consumption, water consumption, and the emissions. So our ambition as an organization is not only to reduce all these three things for ourselves, but also to reduce these for our customers. And so what we have done is, for example, we have a number of programs. Was one of the strategic programs that we have is sustainability in customer operations, wherein effectively what we do is our sales personnel work with the sales personnel of our customers and try and find out where are the gaps, the products that we are providing to them, what is the environmental impact. We do or kind of jointly work with them to assess the conditions under which those equipment will be used, right? For example, is there a water stress in the area that equipment is being deployed, right? Is there some sort of a energy crisis that in that location, right? All of those externalities are assessed. At the same time, we also assess the conditions which the organization wants to fulfill when they deploy those equipment. So in a way, I would say we are helping our customers to jointly assess the impact of these equipments that they put out in the market. The other is, in a way, I think, we have talked about this in the past, but we have, as an organization, we have been working very hard to try and reduce our environmental footprint. So one of the, I think, the commonplace products that you see is the paper-based beverage cartons, right? More than 70% of that carton is actually made of paperboard, and about 20% is food-grade polymer, about 5% is aluminum. We have been constantly trying to see and experiment on how can we reduce the environmental footprint without affecting the food safety aspect, because for us, that's the paramount thing, right? So as long as we can keep the food safe, the rest of the things can follow. And the thing that we realized last year, and I think we have done this a couple of years back, but the new innovation that we came out was to completely remove the aluminum-based barrier and replace it with paper. So it's a paper-based barrier in a portion pack, followed by plant-based polymers, which effectively increases the renewable content of our cartons to 92%, right? And this has been a journey which we have been doing with kind of, following with our customers also to try to find out how do we really reduce the environmental footprint. And Carbon Trust, which actually, we engaged to try and find out what is the reduction in carbon impact, found out that the overall impact of the paper-based cartons reduced by 43% versus the regular cartons, which was made of, let's say, aluminum-based barrier. So, see, I can go on and I have a lot of examples like this, but the point is that while so far, I think we had been on a journey to try and become more sustainable, lesser carbon footprint, but now that we see that this is also being mirrored and kind of something that our customers are also willing to support us on, we are working jointly on this. And all these assessments that you spoke about, we are actually doing that. I mean, LCA, for example, we do it pretty regularly to see where do we fall, and in the pecking order of other formats, are we doing better? Is there a way to improve? So that's an evolving journey, and we continue to focus on that pretty aggressively.
That's great to hear that businesses are already doing it. We would love to see reporting as well, like more businesses saying out loud that how much reduction they have achieved, because this is what encourages other businesses, at least the smaller ones, to start doing as well and reaching out to you to learn. So that's a great examples that you've given. Now I'll go to Suniti. So you mentioned the ISO standard, and we know that there is an ISO standard that's coming up soon on food loss and waste. So what kind of support do suppliers, micro, small, medium enterprises need to measure and report food loss and waste in a practical way? Because the standard would come in, but what do you think would be needed to actually get that implemented?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so as I said, ISO is in the process of coming out with a new standard, and that standard is likely to come maybe by the end of this year, because it is just in its final stages of consultation now. And that standard is it's a management system based standard, So it is called as, it will be ISO 20001. So we have the 22,000, which is the FSMS, which is the Food Safety Management System. So this will be 20,001. And that is on the food loss and waste management system, requirements for prevention and minimization of food loss and waste across the food supply chain. So it's going to take into consideration all kind of food businesses. From the post-harvest, of course, it will exclude the farmers, but from the post-harvest till the retailers. So the entire food supply chain, all the food businesses will get covered. And this has been brought out in the form of, or is being brought out in the form of a management system. Standard is, because you have food companies which are implementing other management system standards, especially the FSMS and maybe environment management, etc. So it will help them to integrate, their existing procedures and systems with because as Mr. Deepten also said, that it is food safety which has to be the paramount for any food business. So it's important to integrate whatever systems and procedures, internal systems that the business, has already, is already implementing with the food loss and management system standards. And the standard will, in fact, it's a very, you could say a very educational kind of a standard also, because this standard is also giving, some sort of help to the small and the medium enterprises, in terms of the actions that they may take, to demonstrate their compliance with this standard. In terms of some of the examples they have given, it is based on a principle of, like how the best way that you can do is that if the food that you're trying to the waste that you're trying to reduce in terms of it should first be available for human consumption itself. That means you should be able to rework it or repurpose it so that it is still available for human consumption. Then one step down the ladder is if it is good for animal consumption in terms of can it be repurposed into animal feed, And the third is in terms of maybe going to through a pet food kind of a chain, or if it is still not able to meet those criteria, can that food loss that is happening within the food business, can it go maybe in terms of as a biomass for energy production, which was I think which was discussed in the previous session. But that is a lower down, system. And then, of course, the last is if there is nothing else, it will go in the landfill. So that is something which has to be excluded. And then based on this, how you can measure, how you can quantify, how you can monitor it, it will basically bring out a standardized framework, so that one business, how one business is reporting its food loss progress in terms of another food business, how they talk to their stakeholders or investors, because at the end of the day, as India also a signatory to the 2030 UN Declaration on the Sustainable Development Goals, we also have you could say an obligation to show and demonstrate, that we're able to reduce, which is I think SDG 12, which is responsible consumption, responsible, responsible consumption and responsible sourcing, responsible sourcing, where you have to reduce by half by 2030 the food loss across the supply chain. So I think it's a very apt time that this standard is coming up. Obviously, the standard will be a voluntary standard. It's not a regulation unless it is backed by regulations, but it will benchmark, the practices across the food businesses, and I'm sure that it will help. And as I said, in the annexures to this standard, they are bringing out some sort of examples. In fact, various examples they are giving, that a food business can do, that how they can, various practices and strategies that they can implement. So it will be just like any other management system standard. So easy to implement. So thank you.
That's great to hear that it's easy to implement because, as you mentioned, Sachin, this is the first step for getting any intervention to actually work. It should be ease of implementation on the level. So going back to you, so many farmer level initiatives begin as pilots, but sustaining them is often the hard part. There are a lot of pilots that, come in place but never get scaled up. So what can be done to or built into the system model from the beginning to ensure that, for example, food loss reduction continues after the pilot stage as well?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the previous question as well, that uh, such solutions should be part of the business model for scale up, because anything you do at a small scale, if it is not commercially viable, it will not scale up, because finally what matters is that you are able to do it economically. So our experience has been that we have taken all the key strategies of food loss, which includes also the quality preservation, ingrained into our business model and farmer engagement. So, for example, it starts for us not at the time of procurement, but at the time of the crop cycle with farmer. So, we train farmer, educate farmer in terms of the right practices and how they are going to get benefited, because farmer is very wise in terms of taking right commercial decisions if there is a benefit. Second thing is, helping farmer with right education and information. So we conduct a lot of training programs across, and also through our ITC Mars platform, we provide very curated, customized advisories basis weather, crop condition, and the kind of crop farmer is growing. Third thing is, providing interventions of right infra at the farm gate, in such a way that even if farmer or the FPO is investing, they are able to get the return. Say, for example, we have introduced good buying systems and, quality testing systems, help FPOs to build their own buying centers, platform. And what has happened is when their turnaround is faster, they are able to actually get the investment, returns, or the government schemes which are available, they are been connected. Even like for example, I give you an example of chili. So drying is a problem, aflatoxin becomes a big problem. So we've innovated a very low cost dryer, which can work at the FPO level, and it is very low cost, so the FPOs are able to buy. The advantage is that when they sell the chili, either to us or even to other players, their quality is much, much better. So there is an economic benefit which is coming out. For us to do all this is the advantage of getting the good quality when we do procurement. So it's not that it is a charity for us, it's an economic advantage for us as well. So the whole idea is that for the farmer, for the FPOs, for the say for ITC or the value chain player, there is a integrated model, and it's not only improving the current model but also say creating a new design. So I'll give you an example of same principle in three value chains, which we have adopted. First is work with FPOs, because FPOs are able to address the last mile aggregation faster. So in milk also we have farmer producer groups. In say grain like wheat we have FPOs. In spices also. Second is provide information. So we educate farmers in all these three value chain, but the knowledge is customized for that particular say value chain, how to reduce the food loss or the losses in that value chain. Third is critical infrastructure. So as I mentioned, so in chili, like I gave you one example, in grains we have this quality testing and the entire localized infra. In milk, what we have done very innovatively, we have provided automatic milk collection units, and also the low cost milk chillers which work on the solar or automated power. Whenever power comes, they get charged, so you don't need power, so they work on intermittent power without a genset. So it's also a low carbon footprint solution, and it actually chills milk in the village itself. So the result of these, we are working in 7 value chains, and WRI is our partner. But out of that, these 3 where we have done a measurement recently. Like in wheat, the baseline losses have been 6.65%. Now these farmers in 1 year of work, 1 season of work has reduced it to 2.3%. So there is a 60% reduction, and saving to the farmer is almost 5,000 rupees per hectare. So farmer is making money in this process. FPO is able to sell much more. So there is economic benefit for FPO also. In chili, normally value loss both in terms of quantity and quality is 32%. Now with these interventions, it has come down to 10%, 69% reduction. And since chili is a very high value crop, almost 150, 180 rupees a kg, the advantage is coming 40,000 rupees per hectare. Milk, total loss milk is fully spoilage is 5%, while farmers take care of milk. And with this, say automatic milk collection unit and chilling, it has come down to 0.5, which is almost 85% reduction. So this is the impact which is there, and these are large scale, like almost 25,000 farmers. We have conducted a survey among 25,000 farmers through an independent agency. So therefore, if you integrate the solutions in the business model, do it right, create value for all stakeholders, you can create solutions which are, say, sustainable and scalable.
Those are some very important statistics. I think whenever we have statistics, it gives us better imagination on what is the scale that we can actually reduce. Last question to you, Shrimoyi. I hope you're there. So a similar question, what kind of systems are needed within companies like Marico to sustain these interventions which are towards reducing food loss and food waste? You're on mute.
I am
Yes,
speaking. I'm not sure if you
yes,
can hear me.
I can hear you.
All right, great. So I just wanted to echo something that Mr. Sharma just mentioned, that we have to start considering this beyond our corporate social responsibility. The food loss management for brands like whether it's ITC or Marico or any of the other FMCG companies in the country, it has to have a direct business prerogative, and that's exactly what we are trying to do here at Marico. There is cross-functional ownership that is needed to tackle this kind of a problem, given the scale of the problem statement, right? So the governance system that we have set up, food loss is not something that is tracked in isolation from the other major business critical KPIs on ESG that is mapped for the organization. And there is board level governance. So there is tracking, reporting, and surveillance that is happening across different levels of the organization, directly up to the board. And there are cross-functional teams that have really owned up some of these targets, some of these initiatives that we have institutionalized within the company. I think that's one major intervention that corporates really need to bring up, a very systematic governance process to be able to deal with this and involve multiple functions so that there is integration that happens at a business level. Secondly, there is a program that is pretty well known now. We had started with this program in 2018. This is Marico's Responsible Sourcing Program. It is also known as Samyut. Samyut is a Sanskrit word that actually stands for Together We Achieve. This program is based on complete maturity-based, interventions for the entire spectrum of our supply base, which starts with very smallholder farmers, the ones whom we are talking about today, to large-scale polymer manufacturers of the country. We have developed a kind of responsible sourcing framework along with policies, systems, frameworks, etc., that can actually cut through the entire supplier base that we have, the entire spectrum. So there are three stages to the supplier maturity program. At stage one, like I said, capacity building is very, very important. That is what we start with. Follow voluntary declaration of their existing ESG footprint. So that is what we start with. We do not do any kind of assessment at level one. We capacitate them on what exactly should be business critical KPIs that you should be tracking within the ecosystem. You may be a small scale farmer with almost a proprietary setup, or you may be a large industry. Whatever business ecosystem you're working with, whatever reference framework that you're working with, you need to have voluntary declaration of your own ESG hotspots within your business ecosystem. Once that is done, we deploy external organizations, agencies, who actually go and validate those claims that have been made. What are the voluntary commitments that have been made and whether they actually exist or not. And at the third stage, once they complete level 1 and level 2, at level 3, which is more of joint collaborative evolution, we invest in those companies and we try to come up with programs by which there would be an actual business integration of that particular problem that we are talking about. So Samyut has been very successful over the years. We have a target of having 100% of our critical suppliers certified for level 1 by 2030 and 50% for level 2. We're already at 88% for level 1 and 43% for level 2. So I think That's a program that is going very well. Food loss and waste is actually incorporated within the program. So that's the reason why we are able to track it so well. Thirdly, what we have started 2 years back, we've started measuring our sustainable footprint of our products. We've actually developed a framework called Eco Index, which is Marico's in-house errand product sustainability assessment framework. There, what we do is all these different types of KPIs that we track at a business level, we try to channelize all of that and bring it at a product level to understand what is the ESG footprint of our products. Again, for the food categories, for the edible product categories, food loss becomes one of the KPIs that gets tracked at a product sustainability footprint level. From there, what we try to find out is what are those sweet spots that are there at a product level, at a portfolio level, that we can really work on. Who are the kind of stakeholders that we need to work with? If we are able to actually come up with collaborative strategic projects, how will that improve the overall sustainability footprint of our products overall? So that's another project that we are working on. Lastly, and very importantly, the Parachute Kalpavriksha program, which is our largest CSR intervention. There we work directly with the farmers. I think it's very similar to some of the programs that has already been spoken about by the other fellow panelists. There we work on productivity improvement. We've seen almost 15% plus differential productivity improvement year on year. If your productivity goes up, automatically that will lead to food loss reduction, especially with these smallholder farmers, right? So we have almost 2 lakh farmers who've been enrolled into the program
Thanks, Shimoy. Sorry to interrupt. Just being careful of the time, we already are running a bit late. I'll give you just 30 seconds more if you'd want to sum up, and then we can move on to our next panelist.
Sure. I was just coming to the last point any which way. That was on, I think, valorization of waste is the thing that we are all talking about, and whichever organization that we are, whichever stakeholder we represent, I think it's the source. The moment we do that, we'll be able to deal with this problem well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for your insights and very interesting initiatives that Marico has been leading, and I'm sure people would want to learn more, and we can learn more about them on their website and other details. So I'll now move on to Deepten very quickly. We are running a bit late. Just one key learning that you would want to share with any food business who's trying to innovate and get into the processing and packaging business. One key learning that you would want to share with them for scaling their efforts further.
Okay, one key learning is going to be a difficult one. I have got several. But honestly, what we have seen is there are a lot of solutions that Tetra Pak globally produces, and then we try and see whether this is the right solution for our customers. Over a period of time, I think we have been in India since 1987, so it's now almost the 4th decade that we have been in India. And what we have realized is that it is important before the solutioning to really understand the problem, the point at which the problem occurs, right? So if you have been talking about food loss and waste, I think the initiative that we kind of started doing was to really understand at which point is this really happening and what is really the pain point for our customer. And it is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So what might be happening in the developed world is probably there will be more of food wasted, right, at the consumer level. In our aspect, in our country, probably it is more of food lost, because there are losses which are happening at the agricultural level, at the collection points, even at the processing level, right? So it can't be a unique solution, it has to be tailor-made. Number two is what we realize is that you have to also identify the pain point. Like I said, for example, in the case of one of the solutions that we developed and kind of tailored it for India was the fact that, for example, tomatoes, highly perishable, right? And we kind of started using retorting as a solution, and we ensured that the retorting technology once used in the context of tomatoes now extends the shelf life by at least 2 years without the need for any refrigeration and without the need for any additional, let's say, inputs. It was a pain point because we have had discussion in the past with the government, and they said that among the commodities which are highly perishable and it's a big problem for the government, tomatoes is a big problem. And we kind of took it a little, probably a little beyond the tomatoes, retorting, at least in the Tetra Pak world, in the developed world, most of the solutions are being used for, let's say, soups and for other things. In the case of India, we saw the consumer pattern. We started using that for things like rajma and dal makhani, for example, right? Now, that is what the consumer wants. So we had to kind of tailor the technology and then suit it to the consumer needs. I think that probably would be my single biggest learning.
That's a very important one. Understanding what the demand is and then making your product more suitable for the consumers. The final question from you, Suniti. The standards are there, the standards will come, but what do you think is needed, like one key thing that is needed to actually get them more adoption? I understand it's voluntary, but
Yes, that's right. I think it is, in the end, it has to be based on, if they see a value, if whether it is the food businesses in terms of standards, whether they see a value in adopting that, And I think it's a combination of, also, you, I mean, the value that they see, and also, that the pride that the industry can also have, that they are actually complying with Indian standards. Because sometimes, we see the pride is more that we are complying with European standards or American standards rather than we say Indian standards. Of course, the reason could also be that the industry feels, that the Indian standards still need to be updated. So I think that the important thing is that is also, that whenever we are kind of using the standards, international standards, or adopting them, we have to tailor it, as Mr. Diptan also said, to our own indigenous technologies and our own maybe ambient conditions and the environmental conditions, and to come out with those innovative approaches which can also then be part of standards. So just going a little forward, of course, in food loss and management, it is mostly what we are doing at the ISO. We're not doing much at the national level in BIS. But in terms of sustainability, what we are trying to do at BIS is that for the various food sectors, whether it is like a sugar industry maybe, or a dairy industry, or alcohol industry, etc., we are coming out with, or we are developing with the help of experts, some sort of guides, on sustainability in the industry, so that can help even the small and the medium enterprises, in taking those approaches and options, to maybe use those practices which some of the bigger industries are doing to scale it up and to use that. And in the end, it has to make economic sense, because India being still a developing economy, of course, economic development, industrial development has to be the first. But at the same time, if there is awareness amongst the industry that it has to be through sustainability, so I think that is the so it has to be just not sustainability, it has to be sustainable development. So the development has to still go, So it's a lot of a balance, which the industry has to do. And at BIS, I think we really also take pride, that as a standards body, we try to involve the industry whenever we are making standards. And so at the same time, I think through this platform, I can request, because I'm sure there would be there are a number of food businesses here. So rather than, once the international standards get made and then we say, that they are not actually, they do not mirror what in India we do, why should we not get involved during the stage of development of standards at the international level? So that is very important, and it is happening in some sectors, where India is even leading the development of international standards, because once your experts are, they are contributing at the international level from the beginning, which is a new proposal stage. It is very easy, to get all your maybe innovations or all your technologies or all your concerns and challenges actually incorporated in the international standards. So once that international standard, whenever the ISO standard or the IEC standard, once it gets published, it is actually taking into consideration what we want. So it becomes so easy, for our national committees to adopt that standard as an Indian standard, because we are already, contributed at the international level. So I think through this platform, I will really request, because in this area, the food loss and management, there are still more standards which are being developed. Only one standard, as I said, has been recently developed, but the others are still work in progress. So it will be, we would be really, we welcome the participation from the industry or from other stakeholders to, if they are involved, if they want to develop, participate and contribute at the ISO level, I think that will be really good. So I think
No, that's a very good invite, I would say. I think participatory is the way to go. Yes, Diptin.
Maybe just 10
Sure,
seconds.
sure.
I just wanted to add to what Suniti just said. We are part of the, absolutely mirror what she said. We are part of the CHD 16 committee, which actually sets the standards for packaging material. And I can say that probably BIS is one of the very few departments which actually includes the industry throughout the standard setting process. So we are pretty involved. We are asked for our views. We actually refer to international standards, and then we check whether this is really replicable in India, or whether there is any amendment that is required. So absolutely, just to kind of say that.
That's great to hear. There's a lot of already collaboration and happening, and in a participatory way, development is going on. So just one sentence to summarize this up. I understand sustainability is the way, but like you said, Suniti, it should be economically viable as well. Otherwise, sustainability alone does not sustain. So that's all from us. If we are skipping the question and answer rounds, but they are right here after the session, so you can please go one-on-one and ask your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I would now like to invite all our speakers for group photo.